to go to manupcharlotte.org, register, you'll get sent the links.
Okay, we're broadcasting now, Reggie, in case people start coming in.
Gotcha.
Just you and I currently.
Gotcha. So,
well, welcome, man, to Man Up Charlotte. This is our breakout session, and we're very fortunate to have with us Reginald Bean, Vice President of Coca-Cola Consolidated. Reginald is the Vice President of Culture, Engagement, and Inclusion for Coca-Cola Consolidated. In his role, he's responsible for providing strategic direction and planning while promoting a purpose-driven, values-based culture through effective employee engagement. Additionally, Reginald's responsibilities include developing external relationships with strategic outreach organizations designed to enhance the experience for employees, customers, and partners. Reginald began his career with Coca-Cola Consolidated in 1999 when he joined the company in territory sales. He's held several positions, including Director of Multicultural Marketing, Director of Finance/Operations, Director of Sales Analytics, and Strategic Planning Analyst. Prior to joining Coca-Cola Consolidated, Reginald also served our country in the United States Army for 7 years. Thank you very much, Reggie, for your service, where he participated in several international desert and urban training missions. He holds an MBA in leadership from the McCall School of Business at Queen's University of Charlotte. Reginald enthusiastically serves the community, holding several boards of directors positions, including the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center, Samaritan's Feet, and Anuvia Prevention and Recovery Center. Reginald is also a published author of the books Unfinished, 40 Lessons on Purpose, Self and Becoming a Man, and A Year in Some Change, Revealing Your Full Potential Through Purpose and Perspective, where he inspires emerging men and young adults to discover themselves while positively impacting their families and communities. So with that, Reggie, take it away, please.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, guys. Welcome to the first ever virtual Man Up Summit. It's interesting how just a matter of 90 days have changed the way we interact and engage. So I'm glad that you were able to join us this morning. Hey, before I get started, I would love to introduce you to somebody. This person served as the most important person in my life during the first season of my life. This is my grandmother. Her name was Annie Margaret Brooks. And even to this day, there's so many nuggets that I carry from my grandmother that she taught me or told me or just exposed me to. You know, if I had to describe my grandmother, I would describe her as a cross between Mrs. Doubtfire and Malcolm X. She was loving, caring, but she was just something to be messed with. And so I just want to, really set the stage and really talk a little bit about the person that had the biggest impact on my life. But when I think about some of the things that I lost my grandmother in 2004, but there's so many things that I carry with me throughout life, and just a few nuggets that I love to share with you that she left me with. The first that she would always say was, don't be a victim. We all have a story and a starting place, and you had nothing to do with any of it, but regardless of where you are in life, don't play a victim. God has infused you with so many gifts and talents, and he never would give you more than you can handle. So that was one of the things that she would always say, hey, don't be a victim, figure a way to solve the problem. The next she would often ask me was really surrounding fear. What could you do with your life if fear wasn't an issue? If you were able to just push fear to the side, what could you accomplish? Who could you be? More importantly, what relationships could you have if you weren't afraid to really lean in? And the biggest one that she would often tell me, which is really what I want to talk to you guys about today, is she would often say, don't let anyone drive your bus. You're in control of your life, control what you can control, but don't get in the habit of letting somebody else navigate, push you into doing something that really isn't in alignment with your calling and your purpose. And so that was one of the things that those are three of the things that I would often carry from my grandmother, and which is really what I want to talk to you guys about today is who's driving the bus of your life. Growing up in Detroit, we had to catch several buses to get to the school, the Catholic school that I went to. And we'd leave the house at six or so in the morning, but we'd have to catch 3 buses. And if you think about, the catching a bus, if any of you have ever taken a bus, I mean, there's just a lot about life that you can see getting on a bus. Just people, working class people getting on, some people getting off. And that was really, I think about metaphorically speaking, that was symbolic of my life. And so there were several people that's getting on the bus and several people getting off the bus. But as long as I'm driving the bus, and none of those things really matter. And so my question to you today is, who's on your bus? Meaning, who's in your life? Who are your circle of friends? Who are the people that are influencing your life? Who's on your bus? Who have you allowed to be on your bus? The second is, where are you going? Or specifically, where would you like to go? I know many of you are in a stage in life where you're trying to decide, where do you want to go? What types of things would you like to do with your life? So my question to you today is, where are you going? And lastly is, are you enjoying the scenery? And if you think about, navigating a bus and taking a bus, whether it's a city bus or a Greyhound, there's most buses are surrounded with windows. And so my question to you today is, are you enjoying the scenery? Whether you're passing through neighborhoods that are or are not familiar, whether you're interacting with people who are or are not familiar, are you enjoying the scenery while you're on this bus of life? And so one of the things that my grandmother used to always say that still sticks with me today is, she would often say, I can love you if you lose, but I can't respect you if you quit. I'll let that soak in just for a second. I can love you if you lose, but I can't respect you if you quit. So she had the foresight of knowing some of the challenges that I would face throughout my journey in life. And so what she was telling me is, it's okay to lose. You're going to fail, but you can't give up. It's okay to lose, but you can't give up. So if you think about, as you're navigating through life and as you're riding on this bus of life throughout your journey, think about all the things that have occurred in your life that you may have wanted to throw in the towel, or you may have said, look, I can't do this anymore. So I'm not sure where you guys are within some of your journeys, but I just want to remind you, quitting is not an option. You can't win, you can't bat 100%, but failure is a part of the process, but quitting is never, ever an option. So as Chris mentioned in my bio, my name is Reggie Bean. I have the privilege of leading an organization based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that has about 17,000 people, really to encourage them to bring their whole selves to work. And that includes their faith, that includes their race, that includes their journey, that includes all those things. And so I've been blessed more than I can even imagine to lead an organization that really encourages them to be themselves, really managing our culture. My journey began in Detroit, Michigan. I'll get to that in one second. My journey began in Detroit. I'm the middle of 3 boys of a single parent, and between my mom, my grandmother, and just the community that was there, they all poured into me and my brothers. But I'll tell you specifically my story, whether it was youth pastors, counselors. I was living in an environment where people just constantly poured into me. And so, that's a little bit about me, but I'll ask you guys, what's your story? We all have a story, and we all have a starting point. They're all different. And I'll tell you, for many, many years, I was ashamed of my story. I didn't know how to really articulate my journey coming from Detroit, coming from a broken home, coming from a broken environment, but I never knew the power that really was in my story, because it was a power of what God was doing in my life and how he was keeping me protected and really preparing me for life, for what was ahead. So I'll ask you rhetorically, what's your story? What's your starting space? For me, if you see the picture to the left of the screen, that's me. That's the 5th grade version of me. And that's that's who I see every day when I look in the mirror. And, if I think back to the 5th grade version of myself, everything was possible. This was before things like the media, the news, the ill wills of life really set in. And so every morning when I wake up, I remind myself to be the fifth grade version of myself, because at that point in my life, everything was optimistic, everything was possible. And so when I look in the mirror every day, that's what I see. And I try to remind myself. I mentioned previously, I grew up in Detroit, but one of the pivotal points in my life, I had a chance to serve. I had the chance to serve my country, and had a chance to visit almost every state in the United States, but had a chance to live abroad as well. And so I had a chance to be stationed in South Korea for a couple of years, but had a chance to visit just all over East Asia. But that was really a solid foundation for my life. And so what I'd love to do today is I brought you guys a few gifts. When I say gifts, I'm really talking about nuggets, just a few points in life that I can share with you. And so as I'm going throughout these nuggets, I want to encourage you, if you have questions, as Chris mentioned, be sure to put those questions in the chat window. So it can be anything from my questions about my personal journey, my professional journey, questions you may have that you may be dealing with on a day-to-day. But I want to encourage you to put those questions in the chat window. In fact, I'll tell you, Chris, the first 3 questions that we get in the chat window, I'm going to send them a copy of my most recent book, A Year and Some Change. So a little encouragement for you to ask a few questions, but I'd love to just share a few nuggets with you. And so one of the things that my grandmother used to tell me is, hey, regardless of your environment, try to think about where you want to go. So regardless of what's in front of you, think about, dream about. So she would often say, get there before you get there. So she would say, get there mentally before you get there physically. So whether you are preparing for the next chapter in your life, whether you're going to try out for the football team, or you're going to try out for the debate team, or you're preparing for high school, or you're preparing for college, I want to encourage you to just take a moment to dream about where you want to go, and visualize it, and that way that will drive your behavior, that will drive your action. So my first gift to you is just to encourage you to get there mentally before you get there physically. And so when you think about some of the things that are going on, even in our communities today, it's often thought of as who's actually going to solve the problems of our communities? Who's going to solve the problems of the community that I live in? Who's going to solve the problem of the community that you live in? So I want to encourage you to, metaphorically speaking, look both ways. Now, we're on a virtual summit, so you don't have folks that are sitting next to you, but look both ways. Who's in your life that are sitting next to you now? Is it your siblings? Is it your parents? Is it your friends? So, look both ways. And those are the folks that are going to help you solve the problems within our communities. And so, my grandmother used to tell me all the time that, hey, sometimes you have to, she would often hear this. And when I say this, some of you may just give me the proverbial eye roll. My grandmother used to always say, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you follow them? And I never understood what she was trying to get to. But, what my grandmother used to always tell me is, be careful of who you allow into your life. Be careful because, those 5, she would often say your fave 5, the 5 people, the 5 closest people to you will have the most influence on your life. But she would often say you have to identify within those 5 people who's having an influence on you, both positive and negative. And so she would often encourage me, hey, sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation in order to be productive for the next situation. So in this scenario of move on to move up, sometimes you have to move on out of situations and out of relationships and out of perceived friendships in order for you to move up and move on in life. And so, sometimes the baggage that comes with relationships, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I just want to encourage you to think about the folks that are in your life, those five people closest to you, because they have the most influence on you, and think about what they are actually bringing to your life, or think about what you're bringing to their life. And so sometimes as men, we have to move on out of situations that aren't productive in order to move up in life. you know, as we're navigating in life, there's always rules that we have that are set before us. So whether it's rules in a middle school that says, hey, no running in the hallway, whether it's rules in high school that says, hey, no leaving campus during lunchtime, whether it's rules in college that says, hey, you can only have a certain, you know, company in your dorm at a certain time, or even if it's, you know, at a job you may work with, hey, there's only breaks at certain time periods within what you're trying to within your break time. So, you know, there's always rules and structures and boundaries, but oftentimes we don't recognize that there are rules in place. And so, you know, I want to encourage you to really recognize, when I say recognize the game, recognize what's around you, recognize how to navigate. And so again, if there's something like you're pushing for in this next chapter, next season of life, understand the construct and the structure that's around you. So recognize the game is really just understanding what's in front of you and understanding how to navigate. You know, it's often said, well, you know, I shouldn't have to conform to systems and processes. Well, we all do. There's rules and structures around, but understanding what they are so you can actually be successful navigating is really the point that I want to make with you here today. You know, one of the things that my grandmother used to tell me is, you have to respect yourself in order to get anybody else to respect you. And so one of the things that I had to learn how to do over the course of my journey is really learning to love myself, learning to accept exactly who God made me, and learning to accept the gifts and talents that he gave me, but more important, the gifts and talents that he did not give me, knowing that there was a specific calling on my life from God that says, I want your assignment in this journey, in this life is for X. And learning how to accept those and respect those was really, really key for me in my journey. So the point that I love to make here is just making sure that as you are trying to accomplish whatever it is, whatever success means to you in your life, just to always remember to respect who you are as a person and exactly who God made you to be. Because, you know, trying to run somebody else's race, if I had one fear in life is running the wrong race, you know, winning at something that wasn't designed for me. So I want to encourage you all to smile at yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror, just knowing that God made us all unique, all as individuals, and respecting the reflection. You know, this notion of fear, and you guys have heard me mention fear several times throughout these slides. You know, fear is a real thing. You know, fear, it doesn't matter if it's the fear of life. It doesn't matter if it's the fear of trying something new, leaning into a new relationship. You know, this notion of fear is a real thing, but fear is not the thing that I want to really focus on. It's really, what do you do with the fear? You know, how do you recognize the fear? Because courage is when you're able to push through the fear. And you know, I remember for me when I became a dad, you know, that was fearful because I didn't have the proper instructions. I didn't have a great example, but I knew in my heart that I wanted to be a good dad. I knew that I wanted to be I knew that I wanted to be a good friend. I knew that I wanted to be impactful within my community. So I want to encourage you guys to recognize the fear, because it's a real thing. But it's courage that allows you to push through. So I want to just recognize that. And lastly, and most importantly, you know, as we think about who exactly will be the change agents within our communities, within your household, within your schools. And again, if you look to the left and the right, I want to encourage you to look directly into the mirror and just understand that as people who are a little further in their journey, i.e. me, I want to encourage you that you're the change makers. We are excited that you came to this conference, because that's telling us that you're interested in learning how to either be a better man, to be a man, or to really make a difference within your community. So I just want to encourage you and remind you that you are the change maker within your community. And again, God gave us all unique gifts and talents as individuals, and learning how to use those gifts and talents, pushing through the fear, understanding and respecting the reflection in the mirror, is going to be what's important for you as you are a change maker. So throughout my presentation, I encourage you guys to submit questions. And again, the first 3 questions that I'm happy to send you a copy of my most recent book, A Year and Some Change. So Chris, I'm not sure if we've had any questions that
Yes,
come
we
in.
We've got a few questions, and some are coming in as we speak. Corey asked this: did you notice people on your bus, Reggie, that you needed to let off? And what did that process look like? And where did you start?
Yeah, so thank you, Corey, for that question. When I was younger, I knew that there were people on my bus that didn't belong, but I didn't often, as a younger person, I didn't have enough courage to say it's time for you to get off the bus. And so what I learned to do over time, Corey, was I learned how to remove myself from situations, and I learned I coined the phrase on you can love people from a distance. Even though you may have a friend or an acquaintance that's in your life that may not be the most productive for your life, how do you create a little distance and separation that they may not be, your everyday BFF, but you still, create enough separation and space. So, learning to love people from a distance is how I learned to manage that, Corey. Thank you for that question. And Corey, if you don't mind, I'm gonna give you my contact information at the end there. If you can send me an email with your contact information, and I'll send you a copy of that book. Thank you for that question, Corey.
All right, we have another question from another Reginald. Reginald asked, what was your childhood like as a teen?
Wow. So my childhood as a teen, so I grew up in Detroit in the, late 80s, early 90s. And it was, my teenage years the environment was pretty dysfunctional, but my teenage years itself, because, I had great friends, great friends around me, but, the environment was dysfunctional. But my teenage years, I'd say, was, typical of many teenagers in many urban environments. There were lots of dysfunction to get into, lots of non-productive things that were going on. But, as I grew into my teenage years, it was, lots of time spent in, working with the youth team at my church. But it was like many other youth environments in many urban cities. Dysfunctional, but loving, with a great support system.
All right, we have another question, Reggie, from Ronnie. Ronnie asks, what's the value of having people on your bus with whom you disagree?
Say that one more time, Chris.
What's the value of having people on your bus that you disagree with?
Well, it depends on what you're disagreeing about, Ronnie. If you're disagreeing about the values that you have set for yourself, then I'd say it's not productive to have those people on your bus. But if you're disagreeing about how to solve problems, or disagreeing whether it's socially, politically, what to do in life, I'd say there's tremendous value in having those people in your life, because those are the times that stretch you. Those are the times that challenge your thinking. Those are the people who actually help you grow. So if those people are not challenging your values that you have for yourself, if they are challenging, I'd say they shouldn't be in your life. But if they're challenging you and challenging how you think and challenging what, those people are always productive. And so even as adults, having people who think differently in your life, in my life, is extremely productive, because they force me to grow. They challenge my thinking, and they challenge at least what I thought was the truth.
All right, we have another question from Jeremy. Jeremy asks, how would you suggest encouraging people close to us to reevaluate their perspective on those around them?
Well, what was the name, Jeremy?
Yeah, Jeremy.
So Jeremy, I would say, as men, as young men, we're responsible for one person, and one person only. Now, we can encourage people to change through our actions and behavior, but I'm not a fan of trying to encourage or force somebody else to change, because they have a different calling, a different journey that's been put on them. But I say control the things that you can control, and that often starts with you. Now, if somebody else doesn't want to see the world the way that you see them, that's okay. Maybe it's time to let them off the bus, or maybe it's time to be a better influence on them, that they can see your behavior and see how you move and how you shake throughout your day. And maybe you can have an influence on them that way. But I'd say control the things that you can control, which is really, that's really yourself.
All right. Mark Rue asked, how does he get a copy of the book? Because he wasn't one of the first 3 questioners.
Yeah, so I would say, and Chris, are do you still have a list of all those questions?
I do, yeah.
So I'd say those first 5 or 6 questions, I'll send all you guys a copy of the book that includes that will end with this last questionnaire. So those that have asked the question, I'll get your name and on the next slide. In fact, I'm going to just flip to this next slide here so you guys can see my contact information. Those first 5 people, I'll cross-reference that with you, Chris. You can just send me an email to reginaldbean.com. Excuse me, you can send it to hello@reginaldbean.com, and I'll get a copy of that book out to you. So Chris, I'll ask you for those first 5 names that ended with this last gentleman here, and I'll get a copy to all those folks.
All right, let me see. We might have one other one here. Kevin asks, was the military instrumental in your further development of your bus?
Yeah, so the military was interesting. So I actually went into the military at 17. I graduated high school at 16. So I was in the military from 17 to 24. And there's several things that I got from the military, but the one thing was that I really got a chance to understand and learn people who were drastically different from me, whose journeys were different, whose perspectives were different. Everything about them was different. And, you know, growing up in an environment where many of the people look like me, their circumstances were similar to mine, my military experience, both domestic and international, it exposed me to people. But what I learned from that was how similar we are as people than we are different. It doesn't matter if it was a father in South Korea or a father in Laos or Thailand. What I learned was how similar we are versus different. We all wanted the opportunity to take care of our family. We all wanted the opportunity to access to opportunities for jobs, and we all wanted love. We all wanted to, you know, provide for our families. And so what I learned was how similar we were as people. It didn't matter where I was in the world, then we were different.
That was great. I have a question, Reggie. You mentioned that your grandmother said, don't be a victim. How do we help people lose the victim mindset today? Because it seems like it's an epidemic in our country, people claiming victim status. And you've obviously grown up with a very different point of view. So how do we change that?
Yeah, so, you know, the notion of being a victim, you know, and I agree with you, Chris, that many people in our country specifically have this notion of it's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody did something to my community, somebody did something to my path. And it's this notion of accountability. And so my grandmother would always hold me accountable. Like if something happened in school, Chris, she didn't want to hear what somebody else did. She only wanted to know what I did. She didn't want to know that the teacher didn't like me. She didn't want to know that my friend Mike from down the street, that he was doing something and that's how we got into a fight. She never ever wanted to know what somebody else did. She only wanted to know what was my role in the process and how could I improve what did I learn from it and how do I improve my behavior? And so I'd say, you know, just from an accountability standpoint, just understanding there are forces out there. There are things that structures and things that are in play, but what are you doing? What are you accountable for as an individual that you can help overcome? So it came down to accountability, Chris, that she would always just say, yes, there are things that as a young man, and specifically as a young Black man, there's things that you're gonna face within this world. But what are you doing to be the best version of you outside of what's already there?
Excellent. All right. Well, we're coming up on 11:30. We've got a tight window to go to our next breakout session. Reggie, thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation you made. It's being recorded. All of you will get to see that. Thanks for coming. Let's leave now and we'll go on to the next breakout. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining. Chris, if you can send me those first 5 names, I'll get a book out to them.
I will do that, Reggie. Yep.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Take care.